Uh, Good morning to all of you. After that very lively session, where it's pretty controversial, it could never end, we go to the next session, which is equally important, getting more important nowadays because there is much more focus on osteoporosis, mainly because better therapeutic armamentarium is available. Earlier, we used to treat osteoporosis only with calcium. Now, much better drugs are available. The question is, what are we treating? Whom are we treating? Earlier, we have the score of BMD. For the uninitiated, we look at the T-score, comparing your bone mineral density with a young Caucasian female. We are Asians, but we are comparing ourselves with Caucasian females. So with this, we were treating, and that was the number. And sometimes it may have no relation to the outcome for which the FRAX scores were designed, and the FRAX scores for which the Indian FRAX scores are also designed. So we have two outstanding endocrinologists, both very good debaters, both who will be talking on this controversial subject. The first speaker is Dr. Dinesh Dhanwal, who is the Director and Professor of Endocrinology, Maulana Azad Medical College. Dr. Dhanwal is a well-known teacher, researcher of clinical repute with more than 70 publications as original articles, reviews, and books chapters. He has done pioneering work in the field of osteoporosis with publications such as Hip Fracture Incidents from India, Mortality and Morbidity in Hip Fractures, leading to development of Indian-specific FRAX. He is also a recipient of many awards. Opposing him, saying that number like BMD is important, is Dr. Muralidharan, who is currently the senior endocrinologist consultant at Fortis Hospital, Mohali. He is an MD and DM from the reputed PGI Chandigarh and was formerly Associate Professor, Department of Endocrinology, PGI Chandigarh. And the areas of research include insulin resistance, androgens, and subclinical thyroid dysfunction. Over to Dr. Dhanwal for the first debate.
Thank you, Dr. Sridhar. Good morning, everybody. It's an honor for getting invitation from organizing committee of this wonderful conference. Next 10 to 12 minutes, I am going to speak. At the outset, let me tell, it will not be a real debate because the topics say that numbers and outcomes, and both these things are slightly different. So maybe we will not have a voting at the end of this event. This will be my agenda. I'll speak about what is the when we talk about numbers, so numbers you can have in form of BMD scores, which is T-score or Z-score. You can have numbers in FRAX score. FRAX score gives a major osteoporotic fracture risk for 10 years, or it gives a hip fracture risk, so that there also we have numbers. Third is number of fractures. Number of fractures is important. Anybody having even a single fragility fracture is at risk for a secondary fracture, and that goes almost 20 to 25% within first 1 year. That's why we say capture the fracture and go for the secondary prevention. And for this group of patients, you do not need any, even if you don't need any BMD or so, straight away make a diagnosis and start treating. So in next few minutes, I am going to talk about how osteoporosis is different in our country compared to the Caucasian population, BMD score. And because BMD score alone is not enough, we need something more than that, and that's how the FRAX came. So then I'll speak about the score, and then I'll give my concluding remarks. The definition of osteoporosis has evolved over last 50 years or so. Initial 47, it was just reduced amount of bone that is qualitatively normal. And this is how this was 91. And the latest definition says this osteoporosis is a skeletal disorder characterized by compromised bone strength, predisposing to an increased risk fracture. And you have two components for bone. One is bone density and bone quality. Sorry for this mistake, for spelling mistake. Bone density, it's very easy to measure, but bone quality, we do not have well-defined parameters. And that's why the multiple risk fractures can fill in this gap of bone quality. Also, as I told you, you can straight away define or diagnose a patient who has a vertebral fracture and or a hip fracture. So that diagnosis is made. Fragility fractures in India are a bit different. Majority of fractures, they occur at least a decade, like other non-communicable diseases, at least 10 to 15 years. Like in our study, hip fracture, mean age is around 50 to 60 years. And if you look at the mean age of hip fractures, in European population, it is above 70 years. So there's a big difference over there. Hip fracture incidence is intermediate between developed countries and Africa. Majority of fracture patients have vitamin D deficiency and secondary hyperpara, and this may be responsible for early fractures. Hip fracture patients in India also have lower hand grip strength. This means that we need to tell our population to do more physical activity, so that once we have better hand grip strength, which is a parameter of muscle quality or muscle strength, one can prevent fall. And if you can prevent fall, I think most of the fractures will not happen. And prevalence of vertebral fracture among older, this was the study done by Dr. Nikhil Tandon, and they are saying vertebral fractures are similar. And very important, we have one of the highest hip fracture mortality 1 year in the world, to the tune of 33.4%. Orthopedic surgeons may not agree with this, but this is true. We have done studies on this aspect. An Indian paradox, despite having low BMD, Indian patient, we expect with a lower BMD to have higher incidence of fractures, but this is not true. So this is what we call as Indian paradox. Almost 50% either in normal or in the osteopenic phase, or in that range. So this means you cannot treat these patients only on the basis of BMD. You need something more than that, and 1/3 of women needing treatment are missed because of BMD alone. Now, this is how we calculate. We have two scores. One is T-score and a second is Z-score. T-score is the number of standard deviation patients BMD is above or below young adult reference population. And Z-score is in the same age group, but we are doing T-score for osteoporosis, because if you do Z-score only, we will not know how much is the risk for. So Z-score is not so useful. That is more useful for younger population, in children, and where you are suspecting secondary osteoporosis. So, and if you change the reference data, there is impact. And this is important from our point of view. If in this particular slide, I have shown that hologic T-scores, they change once we have Nahan's population or the Caucasian population. And if you try to fit in Indian data, this will again change. So this is a big fallacy with the BMD T-scores as of today, because we are using, despite having normative or normal reference values from Indian population, we are still using Caucasian population. I'll show you that also. And this is an example of, this is how the SD scores change with the SD, the BMD scores change. With the SD of 0.1, the BMD will be -3. If you make it 2, then it will be. So this SD will change with different populations, and this will become minus. So with the change of SD from 0.10 to 0.20, this drastic or T-score becomes half. So utility of DEXA is for diagnosis, for prognosis, and also monitoring. You can monitor, but don't do DEXA every 6 months or 1 year. You should give at least 2 years time before reassessing a patient for DEXA. Some patients can, sometimes you can do 1 year, but minimum is 1 year, not before that. Now these are the caveats for diagnosis using BMD. Diagnosis of osteoporosis by DEXA is based on WHO classification, and some patients with T-score which is below -2.5, they may not have osteoporosis. They may have something else. And some patients with T-score about -2.4 may have osteoporosis. And their BMD score is the range, normal range. T-scores may differ at different skeletal size, And we'll find lot of discordance when we are doing BMD score at lumbar spine and hip spine, because lumbar spine, it is more of a vertebral bone, it's more of trabecular bone, which is remodeling is at higher rate as compared to the hip. So this discordance is very, very common. And there are few more points. And diagnosis of osteoporosis cannot be explained just on the. So T score equal or less than minus 2.5 is not always osteoporosis. It can be just because of osteomalacia. So if you need to, if case patient is having osteomalacia features, alkaline phosphatase is high. Osteoporosis by definition is a silent disease. There are no symptoms unless there is a fracture or there is microfracture. So if you find patient having aches, bony aches and pains, you do alkaline phosphatase is high, then you can do vitamin D and PTS levels. And so those patients will be osteomalacia, although their BMD is on the lower side. And one more important aspect, when we treat osteomalacia patients with BMD, with calcium and vitamin D, the BMD improves very, very drastically. And these were the ICMR data for the peak bone mass. I just want to say these values are much lower as compared to the Caucasian population and the African blacks. And fracture risk increases exponentially with reduced BMD, and that's why BMD is taken. Now, what does BMD score tell and what next? So it just tells you that you can make a diagnosis. Postmenopausal tells that patient is having BMD on the lower side, so may not be diagnosis. So next we need to have calculation of FRAX using clinical risk factors, and these are the risk factors for which are related to BMD only. Last number, then unless patient has a fall, there will not be any fracture unless very severe osteoporosis. So we have risk factors for fall as well, but the fractures which are taken into account for osteoporosis or FRAX are only 8 or 9, and this is I'll come to that. There is a need for FRAX because BMD alone you cannot treat these patients. You need to incorporate other multiple risk factors before making a diagnosis or reaching a threshold. So okay, you can make a diagnosis based on BMD, but to treat to take a decision of treatment, you need FRAX score. And this was developed, this tells about 10-year probability of fracture at hip and major osteoporotic site. This is the background. It's a computer based, and the major person is John Canis, based in Sheffield. And this was based on the data from more than 250,000 patients' fractures. And based on that, these were the clinical fracture risk factors which are incorporated. So you have ACE, BMI, and among these important are smoking.
Dr. Dinesh, you have
I'll take
2 minutes.
Yeah, 2 minutes is good enough for me. And history of RA. And this is how it looks. Now, so when you're putting it, so put country, Asia, and then you will find India. And based on this, at the end of when you calculate, you will find out the major osteoporotic risk or the hip fracture risk. And now, currently it is available for 50 countries, and we have 53 FRAX models as of today. There are few limitations of this, but I think our renowned speaker will speak on that, about these limitations. For our country, see, for FRAX we need 3 things. One, you need hip fracture incidence. Secondly, you need overall mortality in that particular population. And based on our study, these are the hip fracture incidents, we could incorporate India on the FRAX method. So what do we do with these numbers now? Now for that we need to have intervention thresholds. Now intervention threshold will depend upon what fracture risk you want to treat a patient. So that's a policy decision. We have to tell government, okay, let us keep these thresholds. As of today, the European and US population, they take in case the hip fracture probability is more than 3%, then you treat, or major osteoporotic more than 20%. So till the time we have our own thresholds, we can use these, and if case we use these parameters, you can take a decision of these patients of treatment. I think I will just go to the There are other apart from FRAX, we also have Garvin and Q fracture risk scores. So, can we now, change does it make a change in the treatment? Yes, we can use the term what we use for diabetes, treat to target. So we can try to have FRAX scores in target by treating these patients. And this is one of the publications this year, JBMR has shown that you can do so. So to conclude, I'll say DEXA is an important tool to make diagnosis of osteoporosis, but interpretation of BMD score is of paramount importance. BMD-based treatment are recommended in majority of guidelines, but Indian context, we have to be careful as BMD is lower due to widespread vitamin D deficiency and lower size of bones we have. FRAX is an important tool for 10-year fracture risk assessment, and an important tool also for management of osteoporosis. In India, we have to have our own FRAX score treatment threshold based upon resources available to us. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dinesh Dhanwal. I now call upon Dr. Murali to give his version.
Thank you, Dr. Dhanwal, for making my job easy, but by laying the platform for understanding of what BMD means and what FRAX means. My job is to tell you that BMD-based osteoporosis treatment, we are not treating mere numbers, but still it represents outcomes. Because day in and day out as clinicians, we face numbers in clinical medicine. It is inevitable, whether it is blood pressure, glucose, HbA1c, cholesterol, or TSH, everything is a number. But these numbers are important because what constitutes abnormal is based on sound data and not just an arbitrary number. And recommendations may vary from time to time, but we can't wish them away as mere numbers. As Murphy said, the issue is not whether we can draw a line. Any fool can draw a line, and many do. The issue is to produce a reasonable criterion for drawing such a line, which will look like a sober decision and not a matter of caprice. BMD is still relevant in post-FRAX era. This is a summary. That's because BMD is in essence of diagnosis of osteoporosis, as Dr. Dhanwal agreed. It has strong predictor of fracture risk, with everyone agrees. There are several limitations of FRAX, which I will show you. BMD plus clinical risk factors are better for prediction of fracture than clinical risk factors alone. The pre-treatment baseline and assessment of treatment response are very important, and for again, several professional bodies have agreed that BMD monitoring is important. The timing and the intervals will change. Patients' compliance to treatment will improve, as studies have shown, if a BMD number is given to the patient, just like a glucose number or a HbA1c number is given to the patient, which helps in patient education. Limitations of other measures to assess treatment response, and BMD, the standard BMD offers scope for improvement. As he has already mentioned, without BMD, there is no diagnosis of osteoporosis. Fracture risk doubles with every standard deviation decrease in BMD, as shown in this slide. And once we combine age with the fracture bone density, the fracture risk further compounds. And a meta-analysis, even though it is published in BMJ 96, still it is oft-quoted, which says how well measures of bone mineral density predict occurrence of osteoporotic fractures. And here, it is almost equivalent or even more than cholesterol predicting a coronary artery disease or hypertension predicting stroke. There are several limitations of FRAX, which Dr. Dhanwal outlined as an alternative to BMD because country specific. We need extrapolation where data are not available in your country. Only recently, the FRAX data for India are available, and Dr. Dhanwal has contributed significantly to that. It's applicable only to untreated individuals and not applicable for assessing treatment response, even though they are working on it. History of falls are not included in FRAX model. Vertebral morphometric data are not included. FRAX doesn't consider vitamin D status. Only femoral neck BMD is included, even though spine fractures are very important. Use of glucocorticoids, smoking, if you look at the model, it only says yes or no. There is no dose effect. The most important thing is steroids smoking as well as alcohol, they have a dose effect on bone, which is not given any credence in FRAX. And there is no consensus about the diagnostic and treatment thresholds. They have just given, it's a pharmacoeconomic model. Every country has to work out its own policy depending upon the government's funds. So even before FRAX was available, we know that several professional bodies used to modify the BMD depending upon the patient's risk profile. Like as early as 1998 and 2001, the NOF and the AASE had given clear-cut guidelines that no risk factors less than -2 or less than -2.5, and in the presence of risk factors, they were treating at a higher BMD score, that is less than 1.5 or 1.5 or less, both NOF and ASE. And several publications are available which say that use of clinical risk factors enhances the performance of BMD, and rather than using risk factors alone, if you add BMD, then the prediction definitely increases. Like as shown here, CRFs alone, hip fracture GR is 2.1, BMD alone, it is better, that is 3.7. If you use both clinical risk factors plus BMD, the gradient risk increases to 4.2. So we cannot just do away with BMD. This is another study, February 2007, Osteoporosis International. Which screening strategy using BMD measurements would be most cost effective for hip fracture prevention in elderly women? It was a decision analysis based on what is called a Markov model, where they compared screen all versus screen only with one positive CRF approach for a woman age 70, follow-up 10 years, and what was found was screen all approach was better. It was more cost effective, and screening all cost only 4,200 euros, whereas screening only with the clinical risk factors 8,290 euros, because we can prevent more fractures. BMD, clinical risk factors and their combination for hip fracture prevention. Another study in 2009 again showed the same thing, that combined BMD and CRF definitely identifies more hip fractures. The use of FRAX in combination with BMD increases the performance characteristics of fracture risk assessment by clinical risk factors alone. Again, BMD helps in diagnosis and treatment. As he already mentioned, secondary osteoporosis, we get a clue from Z-score, which otherwise without BMD you cannot get. Very low BMD, especially T-score of more than -4, will dictate need for anabolic treatment rather than anti-resorptive treatment. Somebody has a T-score of -5, you're not going to benefit by just giving a bisphosphonate. This patient may require teriparatide. BMD correlated outcomes in vertebroplasty. Many orthopedic surgeons are interested in doing vertebroplasty. It has been clearly shown that highly osteoporotic patients may receive the least amount of improvement in mechanical properties after vertebroplasty. So again, here BMD plays a role. That's why most of the professional bodies have agreed that screening for osteoporosis, especially in women more than 65, as a universal screening should be agreed upon. This is the USPTF recommendation, the United States Preventive Services Task Force recommendation, and the National Osteoporosis Foundation 2014 guidelines also say that all women 65 and older, men 70 and older, regardless of clinical risk factors, should undergo BMD, and younger post-menopausal women, women in menopausal transition, and men aged 50 to 69 with at least one clinical risk factor for fracture should undergo BMD testing. Adults who have a fracture after the age of 50 and adults with a condition like rheumatoid arthritis or taking medication daily dose of more than 5 milligram prednisolone or equivalent should also undergo BMD. So there is a common ground where we can integrate both FRAX and BMD. First, use clinical risk factors, find out the fracture probability. If it is very high, treat. If it is very low, just follow up. There is an intermediate grade where you do BMD, reassess probability. If it is high, you treat. If it is low, do not treat and just follow up. This will be a middle path approach, which at least in countries where economics are important, like in our country, will be important. This is the US NOGG guidelines 2008, where they have followed this path approach, where clear-cut low risk, no treatment, clear-cut high risk, consider treatment. There is a gray zone in between. BMD has to be done. So again, BMD is important. And correlation of treatment-induced BMD rise to changes in fracture reduction. This is one argument always mentioned as deterrent for BMD. For instance, when you use bisphosphonates, even at 1 year or 2 years, the rise in BMD is not correlating with the prevention of fracture or further fractures. There is a 70% reduction in the further fracture, but BMD contributes with only, for instance, if you see here, the spine BMD increase 4.3, 5.9, 6.2 with anti-resorptive treatment. These are the earlier studies. But recently, the meta-analysis has shown that the BMD rise contributes marginally to the improvement of the fracture risk with bisphosphonates, anti-resorptive agents. Whereas the data for anabolic treatment like teriparatide and strontium ranelate, the response is much more, that the spine BMD increase and its correlation with vertebral fracture reduction as well as non-vertebral fracture reduction with anabolic treatment is much more correlated. That's why contribution of BMD change to fracture reduction modest with anti-resorptive agents and better with anabolic agents. Again, as I earlier told you, there is a correlation between patient recall of bone densitometry results and subsequent treatment adherence. Patients with low BMD who correctly reported their results, that is, their clinicians explained to them what this result means, they were more likely to have received a medication and to continue to take it. So compliance improves if you give them a number. Just like you give a HbA1c target of 7 or 6.5, the patient's compliance improves. What else do we have if you are telling that BMD is not good? Quantitative CT, which tells volumetric density, separate measures of trabecular and cortical bone density, evaluation of bone shape and size, or high resolution CT, like what is called micro CT and high resolution MRI, which also show the trabecular and cortical bone microstructure, but these are research tools, technically challenging and costly, not for routine use. There are biochemical turnover markers, which have less standardized methodology. The clinical practice guidelines are not routinely mentioning about them, even though they show short-term responses much better than bone mineral density. But there are several limitations to the bone resorption markers, like they reflect total skeletal turnover. They are not always specific to bone metabolism. There is substantial biological variability. I'll have just one more slide. Multiple assays for same analyte do not assess osteocyte activity. There are several sources of pre-analytical variability like age, menopausal state, gender, fractures, and circadian variation, fasting state, exercise, etc. And last slide, now DEXA itself has many value additions like lateral vertebral fracture assessment, femoral neck shaft angle, hip axis length, hip strength analysis, trabecular bone score analysis, which can improve the predictive power and assessment of response to treatment. As shown in this, the newer techniques with the standard DEXA, if you incorporate, we can improve. So my conclusion, the advent of FRAX does not mean the end of BMD. In fact, wider use of BMD and non-mass bone testing methods could help FRAX provide a more precise risk assessment. We can't wish away BMD as a mere number. It's here to stay till we get something better. And that something better seems to be elusive till now. Thank you.
Dr. Dinesh, you may speak a few words if you want to rebut your points.
Frankly speaking, in the beginning we said this is not like, we are almost on the same page. So BMD we have to do for diagnosis, but now with the FRAX coming up, we need to, and for I want to emphasize for our own population. Now we see patients with age of 45, 50, 51, 52, men or women, they get their BMD done because of unspecified reasons, and they are being treated with anti-resorptive agents. So I just want to give you a message, let us not treat patients just based on the BMD numbers. Calculate what is their 10-year risk. See whether they have vitamin D deficiency or not. Most likely they will have it. So treat all these things first before embarking on just using BMD number. Thank you.
Please tell the resources from which a normal person can get the
FRAX tool. I think in case we have internet here, I can just show it's available. Just Google FRAX and you will find the FRAX site. The app is available on phone, so you can download on your phone and you can use in your daily practice. Frankly speaking, Frex has been done for use of general physicians, family physicians, so that they can pick up patients who are at risk for osteoporosis. The Frex should be used by all of us to pick up patients who are at high risk for osteoporotic fractures, so that large number of patients can benefit from our treatment. It's very, very easy. You can, I think, sitting here, you can, through your mobile, you can just calculate your own Frex. Thank you.
Dr. Burli.
Right from the beginning, myself and Dinesh decided that we are not going to have a bitter fight, because debate is for spreading knowledge. And that's why I mentioned to you the middle path, where Frax will be there, or maybe we can add more to Frax so that the risk prediction engine can improve further. And on top of that, add BMD wherever necessary, like I told you, the gray zone. So we'll have a win-win situation for both. So the science wins. It is not Dinesh or Murli who should be the winner today.
Before throwing the, within inverted commas, debate to the audience, I would like the speakers to enlighten us, because as he spoke in a few words about some biochemical markers, one should be aware that if when you're giving a treatment with a drug like teriparatide, which is quite costly, patients are always at our back. And they say, have I improved, have I improved? And doing a BMD within 2 months or 3 months is not going to solve the problem. So there are some new biochemical markers like P1NP levels, urinary NTX, urinary CTX, osteocalcin. Probably the speakers can throw just a few words on the importance of these and when to use them.
See, when we start treating patients with osteoporosis, if they have fractures, and we start using anti-resorptive agents, even the symptoms will also take a lot of time. So we are left with how to tell a patient whether he is improving or not. And also, when we are using both anti-resorptive as well as teriparatide, which is more common with teriparatide, sometimes at the end of 1 year, you will find the BMD has dropped. So, and it's very difficult, then it will be very difficult to convince the patient. So in that case, we are not using markers for diagnosis. Only usefulness of markers is, one is of course research, and second is to follow these patients. So you can do CTX and NTX are markers of bone resorption, P1P and osteocalcin, and alkaline phosphatase are markers for bone formation. So we can use these, but I'm thinking in our clinical practice, what we have seen, I'm not doing many of these. At the end of it, patient symptoms will start improving and fracture will come down. As I told you, the chance of having a second fracture within 1 year, almost 25%. After hip fracture or vertebral fracture. So it is important that if you are able to reduce, if there is no fracture, no second fracture in patient at the end of 1 year, 2 years, and even if you don't have BMD or you have BMD, you are certain that this patient is improving. Thank you.
See, the most important thing to understand about markers is that it is more like SMBG or fructosamine when compared to glycosylated hemoglobin, because they indicate short-term changes, whereas bone mineral density evolves over time, and so you will start seeing the response only at 1 year or maybe 2 years. The other important thing is markers have larger number, so the changes can be easily seen, whereas bone mineral density, it is 0.5%, 1% increase, so the magnitude of change is less. Because of these two reasons, markers have an edge over bone mineral density, but as I already told you, standardization, the artifacts, the assay differences, plus the cost, that makes it less accessible.
I think we are running out of time. So, yes, please.
Anti-resorptives, which you think is the best, sir? Whether you go for the bisphosphonates or you go for calcitonin or hormone replacement
Definitely bisphosphonates. Among bisphosphonates also, I'll say for compliance wise, best will be zoledronate, especially after hip fracture. As I told you, 1 year mortality after hip fracture is 33% in our country. Now that's may not be directly related to fracture. We are just looking at overall mortality, which is 33%, and you can reduce. The studies are available, Horizon, which over a span of 6 years have shown that you can not only reduce secondary fracture, you can also reduce morbidity and mortality. We recently concluded one study where we have used zoledronate just before the discharging a patient, and at the end of 6 months, we have found that the mortality is lower, and also the patients are more ambulatory, and morbidity has come down significantly. So now the issue is of using zoledronate and other, especially zoledronate, it's an injectable form. Compliance is so good because you have to give once in a year. Two things you have to ensure that patient is vitamin D replete. So what you can do within first 2 weeks when patient is admitted, give vitamin D 2 or 3 sachets, do his KFT, and try to delay as much as possible. Best to use it at the end of 1 month. But to ensure compliance, we have started for our program of capture the fracture. We are giving at the just before the discharge, so that the compliance is maintained. And that should be good. You can use alendronate, which is quite maximum experience as of today is with alendronate. It has been recommended for, you can give up to 10 years as per recommendations. Others have experience of 10 years, 7 years, 6 years. So calcitonin, not very short term, not much use. No, I think that is more orthopedic surgeons are using this. That is, I'll say it is not of much helpful.
See, there is an effect, tachyphylaxis with calcitonin. Unfortunately, we see people taking it for 6 months, 1 year, it will be more like a placebo. The most important thing is calcitonin relieves pain, because calcitonin and CGRP, they act against substance P. So in a patient with spine fracture who has immense pain, give calcitonin first. That will immediately relieve pain even before it has any effects on bone density.
Murali, I have 2 questions for you. Murali?
We have data up to 6 years, so 5 years you can give easily, every year. But just ensure renal functions are normal, patient is vitamin D replete, and patient does not have hypocalcemia. So you have 3 things and you have a protocol. It has to be given in a hospital setting, patient has to be hydrated. You can give either hydrocortisone or painkiller or one of the anti-allergic medications, because most of these patients will within 24 to 48 hours, they have acute phase reaction and they have a lot of side effects, fever, arthralgia, others. So but it's easy to control these things.
When you use anabolic drugs or indication of anabolic drugs, number 2 is there any nomogram for male osteoporosis in a younger age group?
Anabolics, as Dr. Murali has told, when BMD scores are very low, one patient having severe, when you have osteoporosis, BMD scores are less than minus 2.5, plus you have multiple fractures. So these patients, wherever you are looking for a quicker response, so anabolics are going to be better than bisphosphonates. Yes, as of today. So, but what you can do, you have a sequential. You can use anabolic for 2 years, then straight away you can go for the bisphosphonates. Reverse may be slightly difficult if you give bisphosphonates first, and then you give anabolic, then you give teriparatide. Only problem may be that the response with teriparatide will be delayed, but response you will get. So this, the only thing you should not be using both of these together. So then you have sequential treatment for this. Sequence.
I think I think we have run out of time. Further questions we can discuss over lunch with the speakers. I thank both Dr. Dinesh and Dr. Muralidharan for such a wonderful presentation. This session now comes to a close.
Thank you, sir.